Good morning, everyone. Oh, my phone's going off. Lovely. So today we are going to talk. Let's start from past two times. We went over the story of creation and what God made in the first 6 days. Then we talked last week about Adam and Eve, the first two people on earth that he created, man and woman. And now today we're going to talk about Adam and Eve's first two sons, Cain and Abel. And this is still going in the order of Genesis, which is the first book of the Bible, right? So we'll start off here. We'll read this. After Adam and Eve were told to leave the Garden of Eden, they found a place to live where they could grow crops and raise animals. And they had children. The name of one of the sons was Cain, and the other was Abel. When the brothers grew up, Cain became a farmer who worked in the fields, and Abel took care of the sheep. In those days, people showed their devotion to God by bringing gifts and laying them on a platform called an altar. Cain brought some of the vegetables that he had grown and placed them on the altar. But Abel's heart was different from Cain's. He did not just place anything on the altar. Abel had faith, and he had placed the very best of his best lambs and placed them on the altar. God was pleased with the offering that Abel made. Why do you think that was? Why do you think he was pleased? I think it's because he really thought about he had faith in God, and he really thought about what he was giving him. He wanted to give him the best. Where Cain didn't do that. He didn't give him the best. He just he knew he was supposed to give him something. He just gave him what he had, not necessarily his best of his crops, just something to do what he was told to do, in other words. His heart really wasn't in it. Cain's wasn't. So, God was not pleased with Cain's offering, like we talked about. And in the Bible, it had said that the fire took Abel's lamb, and only Cain's little fruits and vegetables, they just smoldered. They didn't really burn up. And that's how Cain knew that God favored Abel's sacrifice over his. So when Cain saw that God was more pleased with Abel, he became very angry. God saw how angry Cain was and said, "Cain, why are you so angry? If you do right, I'll accept you. But if you don't do right, you will sin." God knew that if Cain did not stop being angry and jealous, he would do something terribly wrong. When he heard this, when Cain heard this and knew that God was displeased and knew that God warned him about trying not to be so angry, that's when he probably should have stopped. But instead, something else happened. He didn't control his anger. He just got more and more angry, more and more jealous of his brother, even though his brother didn't do anything wrong. And he was jealous that God approved of Abel more than him. So, because of this, and because he boiled up with all this anger and jealousy, Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go to a field." And while they were out in the field, Cain attacked Abel and killed him. When God came to Cain, he asked, "Where's your brother Abel?" Cain answered, "Am I my brother's keeper? Is it my job to keep track of him all the time?" Cain killed his brother when he thought no one was watching. But we know that God sees and knows everything that happens. God knew what Cain had done, and he knew that Cain must be punished. And he said, "Your brother's blood is still on the ground. Your punishment is that nothing you plant in the ground will grow. You will just wander around the earth finding food whenever you can." Cain was upset by this, and he said, "My punishment is more than I can bear," said Cain. "I will wander around, and whoever finds me will kill me." So God put a special mark on Cain so that anyone seeing the mark would know not to kill him. And then Cain went away from his family and his home. So his punishment was that he couldn't be around his family, couldn't be around his mom and dad anymore. And that he had to wander the earth, and he couldn't be a good farmer anymore. God made it to where he couldn't grow crops because he had killed his only brother. So we're going to go over a little bit of things here. First is God really paid attention to what they were sacrificing. He wanted them to do their very best. And Abel showed this. Abel showed that he did his very best by bringing him his very best things. He didn't keep the lambs for himself. He gave God his very best lambs, and his heart was really in those sacrifices that he was giving. Where Cain just did what he needed to do to get by. In other words, he didn't bring his best crops to God. He thought it was almost silly that they were doing this. So his heart really wasn't in it. So instead of seeing God as warning him, Cain became angry. God was showing love towards Cain. He wasn't being mean to Cain about his sacrifices, but Cain, instead of trying to fix and work on that, he became mad and lashed out at his only brother, resulting in him hurting him. So I'm going to give you a little example in this time of what could be you not doing your very best. Because sometimes I know we're guilty of just trying to get by. Maybe your parents say, hey, clean your room. And you might pick up a few things, but really you're just trying to hurry up to go play outside. When someone asks you to do things, you want to try to do your very best. And that's what God expects us to do as well. So let's just read this little story here. Jenny's mom knocked on her door and asked Jenny if she could please clean up her room. Jenny nodded at her, but as soon as her mom left, Jenny thought to herself, gosh, I don't feel like cleaning my room. It's such a mess. And I really have a neat homework assignment from school that I've been looking forward to doing. And homework's a good thing to do, right? I'm going to do that instead. Although it's true and it's good to do your homework, that was not what Jenny's mom asked her to do. And it's not what Jenny promised she would finish. In fact, doing her homework instead of cleaning her room might be worse than doing nothing at all. It isn't easy to be a parent, and moms are people too, and sometimes struggle with how to act in certain situations. Imagine being in Jenny's mom's position. So I want you to think about Jenny's mom. I'm sure she had a very hard time trying to decide whether to scold her daughter for not cleaning her room or praise Jenny for doing a good job on her homework. That is hard, because she didn't necessarily do something bad by doing her homework, but what she did bad was that she didn't listen to her mom asking for her to clean her room. So that's tough. Jenny put her mom in a really difficult position, and that wasn't fair. Jenny could have talked to her mom about homework versus cleaning and made a decision together about which would take priority. But Jenny made a choice on her own to do the one thing she preferred without taking her mom's feelings into account. So, as you can see, that's a good example of not doing exactly what you were told. It's not that you did a bad job, it's just that you didn't do what was asked, or Jenny didn't. So in the story of Cain and Abel, Cain could have prayed to God with an open heart about whether he should have sacrificed straw or a lamb. If he had done that, he would have realized that the leftover straw wasn't really a sacrifice. So what he did was he took his leftover foods and made a sacrifice. That's really not a sacrifice. That's just taking stuff that you don't really need and giving it to someone. Does that make sense? A sacrifice is something that you really want or need. And he really didn't do that. And that's not what God wanted from him. So God wants us to do our best and to give our best and to pray to him when we aren't sure what to do. It is easy to close our hearts and justify our actions, but with God's help, with an open heart, we can find the path he wants us to follow. So, in the story of Cain and Abel, Cain did not go to God even when he was confused or angry about what God wanted him to do, and instead, he just kept letting those feelings build up inside of him and build up and build up and build up. And just became really, really what we call resentful. He did not like his brother. He blamed his brother because of this, even though it was really Cain's choices that put him in that situation. It wasn't Abel's fault. And instead of Cain praying and thinking and reflecting on maybe this was something that he did, he took his anger and frustrations out on his brother, and then he ended up killing his only brothers. So in this story, I want you to think about God wants us to do our very best. That's what he asked of those two brothers. do our very best in anything we do. And not only that, I think we need to also admit when we're wrong, reflect on when we're wrong, think about our feelings. Sometimes we can be angry at a sibling or at a coworker as parents, and really we need to think back on, did we do anything wrong? Could it be us that could be causing some of the problems? And that could be the situation. That's very hard to do sometimes, is to really look at ourselves and think, could we have done something better? The best way to do that is to pray. Again, pray for God's wisdom. You can talk to your parents about it as well, and they can help give sometimes it's good to get an outside opinion on those things. But it is very hard to admit when we're wrong and to admit when we could have done something better. So remember that God wants us to do our best, and that He loves us, and that He only wants the best from us, and He only wants the best for us. Okay? So this week I want you to try to think of something that you could really possibly give to someone, or make someone that is really tough for you to do. Not just something easy like a leftover chocolate. Although leftover chocolate's hard for me to give up sometimes because I really like chocolate. But something that you really enjoy, and maybe sacrifice that time for someone. That would be really good practice for us to do. So I want you guys to have a good week, and I will not be here next week possibly. I'm still thinking on it. We're going to be out of town, so you can check. I very well may try to do it. So you guys have a great week, okay? And I will see you soon. Bye.